You're live, Chair.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Members of the public, good evening. Welcome to Torwich District Council Internal Oversight and Scrutiny Committee meeting. First of all, do we have any apologies for absence?
No apologies,
we have full house. Let us move straight to the minutes of our last meeting. And go page number as listed online. Please comment or put your hand up if you have any comment on the various pages. Page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7. Can I have somebody who would propose those as a true record? Thank you, Councillor Inch, and seconded by Councillor Craigie. And sorry, yeah, as always, we have to take a vote on that, having been proposed. All those in favour, please. Anybody against those? Abstentions? 1. Lovely, thank you. Moving to the action list, which is on page 9. There, as we can see, the request for further information on the energy efficiency, etc., the ice machine at the fish dock, and the answer there, where who posed that? Was that you, James? Was me. Or it was you, in, was it? You happy with that response? Fairly full response, and actually it looks like we're getting values for our effort of.
Concern I had was obviously when the fishermen's cooperative finished, we spent an awful lot of money on ice machines, on petrol, on diesel, and the rest of it. And I just noticed the last machine was not very effective.
Yeah.
Clearly, obviously, this new one is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, this is obviously going the right way. The next item, 268, that I have a meeting booked with the Chief Executive and Phil Gilbert in order to, we're meeting next week, I think, aren't we?
I was just checking my diary. It wasn't loading quick enough.
Well,
I think it's next week or the week after.
It's next week, I think. Just to so you know, it's not a complete bluff. In fact, you're right, it's a week after. We're meeting on the 21st to look at the elements of environmental protection that would be suitable to include within the enforcement brief that we want. We've agreed that we want to look at planning, but we've also agreed that the full breadth of environmental protection was a bottomless pit in a way, and we were going to just concentrate on the key areas, and I'm meeting in a couple of weeks' time to sort that. So that is in hand. You'll also note that we lost an item off the agenda for tonight. We were going to have a presentation on the asset management side. I reluctantly had to agree. Officers are not in a position yet to present that fully to us, and there is no point in us taking it if the material wasn't complete. So I have agreed that it would be delayed, and when we come to the forward plan, we'll see that. But unfortunately, that dropped from the agenda. Okay. Do we have any public contributions? Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. As always, I remind councillors that if you do have an interest, then please declare it before the matter is discussed. I have no urgent matters brought forward, and there are no items in part 2 tonight, so no need to vote on that. And without further ado, let's move straight to the section 151 officer on QBR 2.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If we can start with the non-financial information, so Anna will just lead off with the service reports from quarter 2.
Thank you. So here are the highlights. Just as I was getting used to the Sit for Family group that we are compared with, they've gone and changed them. So this is the new map of the groups that we are compared to when we do benchmarking, the 15 councils. They have statistical characteristics similar to ours, to Torridge, and they range in location from Cumbria, North Yorkshire to the Norfolk Broads and Kent, and there are more in Devon. We're compared to more in Devon than we were before. So theme 1, the local economy. The refurbished Bellcote was replaced on Market House in Torrington early on a Sunday morning, and I know the estates manager was hoping that it did not attract any crowds, but it was noticed and caused quite a stir on social media. Business support has continued across North Devon, with Torridge and North Devon Council working in partnership. The support includes grants, one-to-one meetings and workshops. And then thinking about improvements for theme 1, the number of people claiming universal credit has actually gone up since QBR 1, and it's still a challenge to get people into work and encourage investment in year-round jobs. I'm guessing a lot of our jobs are seasonal, which is why there's an issue. And just the good news, this was a bit of a good news story. The average earnings, which is in the QBR, has gone up since last year. The latest figures are 2022 for the year. And we compare quite well within our family group. Communities, health and housing. The rebuild of Victoria Park play area has been designed, tendered and will be delivered hopefully in the winter. Funding for that has come from various sources, including the government's Rural Prosperity Fund, the Bideford Bridge Trust and Bideford Town Council. Active Torridge have a number of initiatives to get residents in Torridge fit and happy, including moonlight swims in Torrington, which I believe have proved very popular. And then thinking about improvements for theme 2, along with other districts in Devon, Torridge doesn't provide the number of affordable houses that they would like to, and that other councils do in our group. And I know that the planning team are monitoring the challenges of trying to deliver affordable housing. And theme 3, our environment and our future. Northern boroughs have been busy asking for volunteers to help with conservation work this summer, and there was a new toy library, which people were able to enjoy the beach in a more sustainable way by borrowing equipment. And the recycling rates in Torridge remain high because we send the 3rd lowest tonnage of waste to landfill or incineration in our group of councils. And lastly, theme 4, our council. The consultation for the strategic plan has had a reasonable response, with nearly half of the comments relating to restoring the train line from Barnstaple to Bideford. Other subjects covered in the comments are housing, the environment and town centres. The Throwback Thursday posts on social media are getting Torridge residents reminiscing about times gone by, creating positive engagement. A team from Torridge spent the day networking with other councils in the region at the Devon Association of Local Councils in Exeter. And the name, that lorry competition, was a great success and even made it onto Spotlight. And looking at trends, the pre-app planning process is improving, with the number of days from ballot to response going down month by month. And hopefully that will continue to improve into the next quarter.
Yeah, so I can go straight on to the finance there. So at the end of, so when we were here 2-3 months ago, we only had information that related to the first 3 months of the financial year. Well, now we've got the numbers as well for July, August and September. The position is becoming much clearer. So back at the end of Q1, we were anticipating an underspend of 472,000 as the interest received, as the cash received on our interest received on our cash balances was very high. Since then, we're now looking to be, broadly speaking, on balance, so with a small overspend that's predicted. And I'll go through a few slides that simply pulls out some tables from the report you've seen already, which explains in greater detail where these changes have come from. This first table just shows the anticipated overspend based upon the organisational structure, and the key tables there are to the right of the narrative around service responsibility. So it's the year end, that's the key one there. And obviously, you can see that most of the underspends are in Chief Exec's office, head of legal and governance, and finance managers, but it's the head of communities in place that picks up a lot of the overspends. And that's partly just because they have they have a lot of staff in there, and they have the property responsibilities as well, so they pick up a lot of those areas. So this just shows in bullet point form the details of some of the adverse and favourable variances. So this slide and the next, which provides a bit more narrative as well. So the staff costs hasn't changed particularly. We're still anticipating the same staff pay award at Q2 as we were at Q1, although now there's significant agency costs which are being built in also. At Q1, we mentioned the computer software and some of the contract cleaning costs, but some of the new items there that are now coming along relate to repairs and maintenance for properties, and some changes to car park fees, which I'll go through in a bit more detail. In terms of the favourable variances, there's no change there in terms of bank interest, but we are showing another 300,000 additional receipts in grants from either central government or the local authorities. I'd also now we're building in some of the savings from the cost of capital financing, as it doesn't appear that some of those, there's going to be a lot of spend on those schemes in the current year. So yeah, this shows again, but with a bit more narrative attached to it, some explanation behind some of the overs and underspends. But I'll just talk about car parking for a moment, because even though it suggests that they're going to be under budget, in reality there's still significant increases from the last 2 years for car parking income. It's just that there was an increase of budget of 300,000 between 22-23 and 23-24. So a big increase in target that they're probably not going to achieve. But it's still positive news on the whole. Yes, and of course, there's still the issue of inflation generally, which is having an impact. As at the end of Q1, there was still a hope that planning income would come back on budget. Now that there is less confidence of that, and they do think they'll be underspent in terms of planning income. And the table just shows those key income lines. So, and of course, there's going to be greater variability for the most part to do with our income streams that we receive. So the largest is car parking income. So even though we're above budget or below budget, sorry, for those ad hoc tickets, we are over budget for season tickets. So broadly speaking, on balance. The second largest item relates to garden waste, which is broadly on budget. The third largest item is rental income, which is reassuringly over budget. But those are those key numbers there. And of course, we report them to you partly because they're big numbers, but also because they're more variable than other sources of funding. So that top table just shows our salaries budgets. So even though it would appear that we're under budget, there's still significant costs still to come through from agencies. So overall, there will still be increased costs for staffing when staff payroll has gone through. That second table on this slide shows the capital approvals for this year and within the programme generally. So that's that large £42 million figure that you see there, which brings in all the large capital schemes like the operational centre and the Appledore Innovation Centre. The second column is the spend in year, and that's jumped up a lot between Q1 and Q2. That's as we purchased additional vehicles, and also we've completed spend on Surrey House, and of course there's the ongoing spend on the disabled facilities grants as well. Although still a lot of spend to go. A lot of that big spend probably will be occurring in the next financial year rather than this financial year as was originally anticipated. And this table it's important to remind you all about our financial health and resilience generally, and its reserves that are a key part of that. So this shows the original budgeted take from reserve as at the start of the year. But of course, you may find that, for example, areas like agency backfill or apprentices, we do draw down upon over the course of as we close the accounts for this year. But at the moment, we don't show any anticipated take from them. There's key numbers within there, of course, in terms of our revenue reserves are the monies put aside to support capital investment, which is the 8 million figure towards the bottom of the table. And also, of course, the transition to government funding reserve at just over 2 million, which we use to help assist with budgetary deficits. And then this last slide, just for governance purposes, shows you where our cash balances are lent out to at the moment. It shows that they're compliant with our treasury management policy, and it also gives you an indication of the interest we're receiving at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. Before we go on to the specific written questions, are there any general questions there based on the presentation we just heard? It was all fairly fairly straightforward and easy to follow, and also the it's in general terms, I think the figures are looking sort of, they're not sort of giving one a complete sleepless nights and heart attacks at the moment. Never be complacent, but Councillor Cotton.
I was just wondering how many responses you've had to the consultation at the moment.
There's 37 responses, one more came in this evening, I haven't managed to look at it yet. So 37 in total, 16 have been about the railway, 9 about housing, 6 about renewable energy, 6 about town centres.
How many did we get at the last council? How many did we get?
I didn't see that coming.
We'd have to have a look.
We did have a few more from the last one. I have been looking at them, but there was more from parish councils. We haven't had any from parish councils as yet. We do still have a week.
None at all.
None at all from parish councils as yet.
Across the whole of Torridge, you've had no.
Have you?
When will the parish councils ask for their response?
As far as I know, it's been advertised, and I've actually sent out an email to the parish clerks.
Because at the last bit of the town council meeting, it was discussed
that they didn't know.
Why hadn't they been invited to
I think
respond?
I can check on the email date, but I have actually had a response from I think it was the Bideford town clerk that I've been conversing with. And he did say that it was about 2 weeks ago I sent out a reminder.
As of 2 weeks ago, 2 of my parishes hadn't received
any notification. I can check on the date that I sent the email. I'm not sure about when it was.
We also sent out a number of invites to the area advisories through Gov Delivery that went to every parish council. So we use that system. It went to.
Okay. I think we might need just we need to do a check on that actually, because if for some reason the clerks have not received the consultation, then we may have to make advise that there is possibly some delay.
The tool we use and the tool that comms use, we can see if they've received it, we can see if they've opened it, if they've clicked on the link. So we can, if you provide us with the parishes that you're worried about, we can take a look at that.
Okay.
Third of October, we sent the first
press release out to all parishes. And then I think it was chased up after that as well. If
Yeah.
we've had an email.
That's fine. Thank you very much. We will. Could all councillors here, just as a random sample, could you please check with your parish clerks, the rural ones, and in the towns, the town clerks? Can we just check that they've actually, they don't want to comment, that's their business. And it's not us, it's not our business to tell them they've got to comment. We just need to know though, that they have actually had that, and they've actually done something with it. Because the clerks are not the authority, the councillors are, and it needs to be brought to the attention of the council. Town and parish council, but I got a bit of a blank look also when I looked.
I'm just a little bit concerned that the scheduling of responses and the schedule of their committee meetings to discuss these things, maybe we need to be giving town and parish councils a little longer. You know, I don't know about everybody else, but we've moved from sort of monthly meetings to 6 weekly meetings to try and be more efficient. But sometimes, obviously, things take a bit longer to go through the system. So I think it's worthwhile finding out and getting a definitive answer from the town clerks as to whether they've actually been able to put it on an agenda for discussion to feedback results. Because our Northern Mayor is here, and sorry, there's, you know, we haven't discussed it at Northern, have we?
No.
No. So
is that because you chose not to discuss it, which is your business, or because you haven't actually?
it hasn't actually been featured on a council agenda, and the town clerk sets the agenda.
We need to make sure.
So we have a full council meeting next week. So the agenda will be going out this
Well, I should
week.
be looking at the agenda, so I should
Yeah.
make sure.
So but then that's got to go on the agenda, and if you're going to formulate a for or against, you know, whether there is the time in the full council meeting to actually debate that appropriately is questionable.
Okay. I guess that's right. We give a 6-week period of consultation and emailed it out the morning after the full council to give all parish clerks that opportunity. Just the district council, we're in quite a tight time frame, but
Indeed, my concern was that they may not have received it. Now, this could be an efficiency business, but certainly I've spoken to two clerks who said they hadn't received anything from us not that long ago. Now, if that is the case, then that is an issue with us at our end. But as long as they've had it, then what they do with it is their business. Councillor Bell.
Sorry, just point of information as a newbie numpty who doesn't know. Is when you say no responses from councils, are we supposed to respond as a council or as individual councillors? And if we try to respond as an individual councillor, are we then a member of the public?
You can take response from anybody, but specifically the town and parish councils have been invited to are part of the consultation, and normally we would see some input, and we'd certainly be aware that the town and parish councils have discussed it, even if they'd come up with nothing to say. But you can still make a contribution whether you do it as an individual. So there's no problem there. Right. Straw poll. Tomorrow, can you just speak to your relevant clerks and just find out, have they had it, and have they discussed it, or are they planning to discuss it? As I said, we can't tell them that they've got to discuss it, but the absence of comment is slightly concerning, that. And, if the consultation is to have credibility, then we want to have a sign that it's been widely considered, other than there is evidence at the moment that certain specific interest groups have leapt onto it. But actually, there's an awful lot in there other than just one or two specific things. Okay. Yes.
Just a follow-up question, just on the new peer group thing, on the affordable housing, I just wondered if there's any that are doing anything differently, the affordable housing, whether they're doing something that we might learn from, whether there's any learns in that group. That's not an answer for now, but it's just.
Yeah, I'll have a look at that. They're very new and I have been looking at some of their websites.
Yes.
So I'll continue to see if there is.
You work with them. Thanks.
I'm going to chip something in about that later on when we come
Well, I
to
can
the
set you
forward
up.
plan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Try, you know.
I've got affordable housing written down there.
That was what you
Okay.
put me to say, wasn't it?
Continuing on the QBR, moving to the written questions that were submitted. And I won't read because you've all, hopefully, you've all seen, I've now been, I've got a paper copy, but you've all seen the responses in the supplement. So the first question from Councillor Bright, asking about more information about the reduction in parking income, mentioned on page 3 and 4 of the QBR, and was there further insight into our statistics? And there we have a response. Are you happy with that response?
Yeah, I just thought better check it because if we're going to have a loss of revenue, we've got to know about it.
Well, absolutely. And I think it's a very bad thing, especially in the other areas of discussion where we've had discussions about in other committees, and indeed it was as a notice of motion, and I know it's coming, it'll be coming back to CNR or whatever, where we've discussed about the use of car parks for charities, etc. In fact, I think Councillor Lovell was put that forward. It's a worthless discussion unless there's actually pounds and pence attached to it. You need to know the figures. Otherwise, you're just talking about soft principle. And actually, how much and what would it cost? Because that's actually, councillors, what we need to know is what is the cost, real cost? Can we afford it? Are we prepared to take the pain? So this sort of question is important, and thank you for it.
Yeah.
If I missed the first two.
I think you.
Oh, sorry, I've been given a copy that was back to back printed. I don't have that luxury at home, and so I missed it. I'm very sorry. Right. But you're happy with that one? The thing we were dealing with that one. Okay. Going to the start of the list. Thank you very much. First of all, question from Councillor Elliott. Total number or the average of agency staff for vacant posts, and the answer there, currently got 11. And then goes on to say that the QBR shows that we've got over 20 posts vacant. How long has been the longest one vacant? And what is the problem with filling them? Is nobody applying for them, question mark? Or is no one suitable or qualified for the roles applying? And there we have the answers. And then he goes on to ask why vacancies in the refuse collection area were not included. And again, the answer, and I've heard that one before, and there's inevitably in that area, there's a lot of short-term churn in posts, and it doesn't necessarily give you a good feel for the long-term situation. But then just as we're on it, what is the number of refuse vacancies? And there we have the answers again, that there's a total of 13 covering grounds, maintenance and waste. 7 have new starter processes in place, people being checked, etc. And there are still 6 currently advertised. Councillor Elliott, are you happy with those responses? Do you have?
Yes, Joe, all the questions are answered.
Good.
All right.
Thank you. Moving on, question from Mr. Harper. Budget monitoring.
Sorry, it's linked to the
Yes.
vacancies. I didn't know if we've got an enabling officer appointed yet. Or not.
Not yet, Chair.
So
No,
it's
it's going
the
through- it's going
affordable
through the-
housing.
It's going through the internal process to put together the job description and do a job evaluation process.
And I was wondering about the legal team. What are the vacancies there and when will they be?
We don't have a legal services manager currently,
Is that out for?
and we're using some external resource to backfill. We've had problems in the past recruiting to legal posts, as we've had with many professional posts.
Well, we are going to actually,
We're having a look at the structure currently.
yeah.
So I imagine the costs for a legal agency. That'll be a lot of money when the council if we haven't got someone in place.
Yeah, but it's very, I mean, just thinking that as we recruited to that post last time, it is very difficult to find, let's call it, professionally qualified people of that style. It's really difficult to attract them in, here, a mix of geography, other professional opportunities elsewhere, professional earning opportunities elsewhere. It's difficult. I mean, it took us a long time to fill it last time, didn't it?
Yeah, and with some roles like you can obviously work remotely. So as the chair was saying, you could have a job paid at the London wage rate and live in this area with wage rates, as we saw, much lower. So that's some part of the problem with some of these particular roles.
Have you got anything further?
No, that's it.
But yeah, I mean, it's a good point. It's with the more specialist roles, recruitment is a problem, as we know. Right, moving on to Mr. Harper's first question on budget monitoring. With the forecast deficits at the end of the financial year, as we saw, a small deficit, 9,000. And yet, during period 2, he says, you know, we're seeing a shortfall of 497,000, followed by a surplus of 472,000. Is it one-off, or will things such as staff costs impact throughout the financial year? And the answer there, much as actually was given in the presentation. You happy with the?
I'm more than happy with it. The only thing is what I'm interested in is the fact that council tax isn't shown on the ledger until the end of the year.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. It's just the way that the income's profile, and I think partly it's. So I've gone back to this first table, and it's the first 2 columns I think that pick up upon your initial question. But obviously, and that's the sort of the actual deficit as at month 6, if you like. But in a sense, that isn't the most interesting number. It's still useful information to you all, but it doesn't actually predict what the full position is going to be for the year. You have to move across the columns in order to get to that. So I think hopefully that's the explanation provided, just provide some additional perspective on that.
Do we phase those as well? Those figures?
All of the anticipated outturn figures are profiled, yes.
Right, we've done Councillor Bright's one, and then moving to Mr. Dengate, harbour and pilotage, a familiar theme in this committee, pointing out that the average Q2 income over the last 3 years has been circa 38.5 thousand, against an average budget over the same period of just over 40,000. However, this quarter's income is only 75% of this 3-year trend, and yet the budget is 57% of the trend. As he asks, what is the methodology being applied to the budget forecasting for 23-24? And the answer, as we see there, which covers the increase in pilotage and also the increase in harbour. Peter, are you happy with that? And then goes on in a lot of detail and how well in that detail, are you happy with the response?
Happy with that. I mean, you can only work with the numbers you have, and the trend is still down, but it's a helpful answer, so thank you. It does explain that variant.
Yeah, I liked I was particularly interested in your second question, which is what needs to be done to encourage big ships back, or is this not possible? What plans are in place to increase the harbour income from alternative sources? There's a big question here, because there is been relatively new on the council that there is a tendency of people to view things through the lens of the status quo. That's how it always was, and that's how it should be. Well, sands shift and things change, and we've been tinkering at this for a while on the whole harbour side, that the business model down there looks, from a statistical point of view, certainly whilst I've been sitting on this committee and I've been looking at QBR reports, etc., the business model has changed. And there comes a stage when you have to, and it's all short-term blips, or is this a long-term enduring trend that there is a change? And the point at which you realize that actually the sands have shifted, and therefore you need to take a different view, and the view will be different to how it's been for the last 50 years or whatever. So this was a very interesting response. Optimistic, asking for another, let's see, for another year. You have a view on that?
Well, the 6-month review in June is good, but I still think that's a little way off. I think shifting sands or sands shifting is quite an interesting phrase if you're looking at dredging. But you know, it is a question, but I think probably does warrant some thinking through, and we obviously have the estuary strategy in mind as well. So it may just be we've got to accept that, you know, past is a foreign country and something's got to change.
The chief executive just pointed out to me that, and in fact, it's an omission in the last minutes that I approved, in the minutes, it stated from our last meeting that I was going to speak to the chair of the Harbour Board with regard to the whole of the thing, but that didn't appear in our action list, and actually should have appeared in the action list. And as a result, I apologise, members of the committee, that I have missed that, and I have not done that today. I will do so, because this again it all goes back into the whole Harbour Board business, and I think certainly that, you know, there is a need for people to decide whether there's actually been whether there is a fundamental shift in business style down there, if that's the right word. And if that's the case, then we as a council should be looking at it differently, as opposed to rather expecting the same old income streams suddenly to come good again. And there are people inevitably who are very close to the organisation down there who will take an optimistic view. That is not necessarily the view that we have to take. But I will discuss with the chair of the Harbour Board, and I apologise that I have not done that. I should have done so. Yes. Councillor Hayes.
Yeah, yeah, the list of possible income streams at the bottom looks a bit sort of optimistic to me, really. But also, I just wanted to ask about the actual Maritime Innovation Centre bringing additional shipping. Could someone explain how that would be bringing in additional shipping? I understood that the Maritime Centre would be a sort of research, basically research function.
You got a view on that?
I'm going to directly. I didn't write the comments, Chair. So I guess it's attracting a lot of attention. So being something on the water, I suspect we've had contact from people interested. So I don't know the specific background to that comment, but we can find out from the Harbour Master.
I think, as we probably all know, Peter, I think that it's all probably far too early to pin a sort of financial sort of tick on it. Yeah, quite.
Thank you very much. The harbour is an interesting conundrum because ever since I became a councillor 5 years ago, we were talking about the viability in the future of the harbour, the role of the harbour master. Did we need a crane or not? Did we need to dredge or not? And it all seemed to be, we'll go away and report back to you. And I'm not sure if we ever, I can remember one discussion with regard to the status of the port and the fact that you couldn't just say, we're not having it. We're not having any more because it's awarded a legal status. So I think there's some things that we really do need to look into. And yes, it's a great thing that we have a harbour, maybe, but not if it's constantly costing us year on year additional money. And if we cannot make it viable, we need to actually start talking about how we can protect ourselves from ongoing financial commitments. So I think it's time to bite the bullet actually, and actually start talking about, are these proposals viable, or are they wishful thinking? And I might be making myself very unpopular, but the issue for me is we have a river, we have a port. Let's find out what we can do with it, and not just hope that we'll suddenly have China clay moving back in here.
Yeah.
And I just endorse that. I've been on now 6 years, and it just seems to be a recurring theme that we keep coming back and we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this, but we never actually stop to say, have we?
Yes.
I mean, the concept is as you absolutely say, and to especially to many very loyal Bideford people, the concept that it might not be viable is absolute sacrilege to some. Well, I'm afraid it's our job to be, rather cold and realistic in looking at it. Councillor Lavelle.
Just there's a group who's been in touch with the council. Help me out, Jack. The title of it, regulatory.
Yeah, it's
So where the board?
Bideford and Torridge, like heritage.
Yeah. Who are currently applying for heritage harbour status for Bideford Harbour, because I think there is a recognition of the fact that Torridge is like links everywhere from the see-through Appledore, Bideford, all the way up to Torrington. Well, that's Torrington, but there were Broad Canals there, and there's a lot of volunteer groups who are very interested in promoting and working with the Harbour Board to make it, to look at it differently. I think you know, the maybe the commercial shipping is not the same. Maybe that it has China clay and timber has altered, but the value of the Torridge to the whole area in terms of heritage and tourism and everything else is hugely important. And I think it's something that really needs discussing with the council and this group and the Harbour Board to see just what I'm feeling very uncomfortable talking because of saying that I'm not supposed to challenge anything that's
no, you're not, it's not challenging to say that.
Doing, so I don't know.
No, I think you're absolutely fine.
Place to accept that everybody's talking about the harbour, so I feel like I'm going to pop
No,
if I don't say something about it.
There's no problem.
But they've been making approaches to the council for some weeks now. There's a big group of interested parties that are really very, very keen to work with Torridge and develop the harbour, not necessarily in the way that it's been developed in the past or used in the past, but to enhance the value of that to the whole area, not just Bideford, but Appledore and I don't know.
I think Councillor Craig is going to speak because you put forward an information to full council only very recently on this.
Yeah, and I think it's very important. Obviously, in the sort of first paragraph in the answer, is the Bideford is capped at 90 metre, and getting commercial shipping, it is increasingly huge ships. So we do have to look at that leisure educational uses, and that does mean reflecting a bit more on the heritage, the past use of it. Because obviously we're lucky that many areas they've just got historic ports. We've got a working port, and we've got to find ways of making it pay for itself, but also making it pay for the area.
And what in response to what you, and thank you very much for raising that, Councillor Bell. What I would say is that initiative is part of the wider discussion that needs to take place. It can't, but where they had issue the other night at full council is that there were suggestions it should be looked at in isolation. Well, it actually needs to be looked at as part of the whole analysis of the harbour side, the commercial side, the value of the value, not only in cost terms, but also in cultural terms of the heritage side. So it is a decision that is taken in the whole. If people continue to come forward and ask us to look at one specific project like that, we will continue to resist it because you need to look at the whole sum. And the whole sum includes, commercially, there are suggestions that the harbour may no longer be viable. So therefore, as part of that discussion, one looks at the opportunity for heritage and whether that can be built up and can that be justified, etc., etc. So all I'm saying is that when it's looked at, it needs to be looked at in the round. Otherwise, we can't do business in a council like this where we're actually trying to look at individual little things without actually looking at all the other things that impact with it. So it absolutely there is a very good case to be made there. I'm not making any judgment as to its merits or strengths, and that needs to be made as an option, possibly to fill some of the vacuum viable wise at the moment. Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so where's the next process to start this, instigating a review of the proper usage of the harbour?
Yeah.
What's the next step?
The next step is the thing that I have not done. The next step is for me, first of all, to discuss it on a one-to-one basis with the chair of the Harbour Board, to see if the Harbour Board are prepared to actually pick this ball up and run with it. And in other words, not just be oversight of the status quo, but actually to be prepared to sit back and look at the whole of the situation there and the future of it and the viability, and either commercially in pounds and pence, or you're going to justify it through other means if it can be. And if the chair of the Harbour Board feels that they're not prepared to take that on, then this committee may well make recommendations as to that being, but that will have to be a council decision. It's not for us to take that decision. But
just a quick follow on. Is the Harbour Board got a specific remit that might stop it from being able to, say, look at tourism or whatever? I don't know what their actual remit specifically is. Is it purely industrial related?
Well, I was just going to ask, because can we have a look at the constitution of the Harbour Board?
The constitution of the Harbour Board is in the constitution. Whereas it'll be on your iPad if anybody look at the constitution. So it's in the Harbour Board is a working group that reports to CNR for decision making, and is fully constituted within the council's constitution. So that's why it's set up, and that's why the chair, our chair here, is going to speak to the chair of the Harbour Board.
Yeah, and indeed, this question here actually strengthens my my discussion that I can have with chair of the Harbour Board. Thank you. I will report back, councillors. But there is okay.
I was just wondering, thinking back to the draft strategic plan, whether it might be an action as part of the local economy to review the use of the harbour. Would that maybe food for thought when we come to agreeing final strategic plan?
It's not for just that session here, but as we said earlier, anybody can make any responsive to the consultation process.
It's not directly mentioned in our draft at the moment, but obviously talking a bit about it.
All the councillors around the table were part of that discussion and debate and approves the draft. So again, it comes down to when that comes back to full council.
Because, and if it doesn't appear in the strategic, it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. So it doesn't, just because it's not in the strategic plan doesn't exclude it from happening. But potentially there's quite a major piece of work there, yeah. And quite a controversial piece of work. Yes.
I've got the terms of reference to the Harbour Board here. It's
well done. Well,
receive reports from the operational services manager on issues affecting management of the harbour. Consider up such issues, make recommendations as appropriate to CNR. Establish and maintain strong links with harbour users, the community and other stakeholders. Uphold principles of governance set out in Department of Transport, something or other. And to participate in reviews of council policies so far as it affects Bideford Harbour. So it doesn't seem to have absolute
a lot of their work is concerned with operational oversight, the actual functioning of what's in place. I'll discuss with Councillor Hicks, and then I will report back with the answer for her.
I just mind, the reason I raised it was that I think that the foundation for the discussion is a financial one. We are here to scrutinise our QBR.
Yeah.
And we have watched over a period of time ongoing costs to the local authority. And that's what we should be scrutinising and saying, we hear and read your comments, but we're not really confident that this is the solution. What are your plans for the future? And I think that's the starting point for the discussion, because you can't keep on propping up something, or can you? Would it be the will of the community that we serve to actually subsidise that because they want to maintain it? So, two questions really.
And both ways it's financial.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, as you just used the word subsidise, subsidy is cash, is money, that's got to come from somewhere else. So if there's some other theme, say heritage rather than commercial, fine, but that will come at a cost, and that will be for council to decide whether that is affordable, etc. But I think absolutely, I hear your point that from our point of view, from a scrutiny point of view, actually, especially as it's gone on and on and on, it is fair and right that actually we put a flag up and say, from a...
My only caution, if you forgive me coming back, is that you need the appropriate legal advice as to the status of the court and the authority about what we are obligated to do. And I'm sure Steve, the Chief Exec, is conversant with that, and if not, he has excellent members of staff who can help him find that.
And again, that is not our concern.
No.
That is something that a review would, of course, that would be one of their starting point. Yeah. But we're not conducting that review, and we're quite right. I understand entirely, agree.
Thank you.
Councillor Bell, one last.
Sorry.
Give it this one. That's right.
I'm very nervous about saying anything out loud, but I'm also very nervous about missing an opportunity to say things when the opportunity arises. But at risk of being very controversial, other harbours finance their harbour activities because by you having the income of the car park of the quay allocated to them. And I have been told previously that that's legally, and I don't know that should be happening in Bideford, and if it were, then the harbour wouldn't be. You can say, well, that's just moving, paying to pay for. But again, you look at the legal.
It's just an accounting entry. It's the car park income is the car park income.
But I'm saying that is how they balance their books.
Ultimately, it's all our taxpayers' money, and we're not talking about a different company. We're talking about whether the money is going in through the harbour books or whether it's actually coming direct. Ultimately, it is taxpayer money, and that is our legal responsibility around this table to be guardians of that.
I think, kind of in response, I think the way some authorities are structured, they might have a port company, going back to what Councillor Newton said. So then there's a kind of a ring fence around certain things. But for Torridge, it's, as Councillor Newton said, it's all the income, all expenditure of the council.
Thank you for that. I've got more than enough guidance to now get around to having a discussion with the chair of Harbour Board. I apologise again for not having done so far. Actually, I'm better placed now to have that conversation, and I will come back to you. And then we move on with our written questions, and we are on to theme 4 from Councillor Elliott again. He asks again, what incentives and schemes are in place for staff retention, of which Sarah A's, the HR manager, produces the list of various incentives and schemes there, which are very typical, I think, to other local employers. Local government is different from private business, and private business have much more flexibility over financial incentivization, bonuses, extras, etc., etc. Within local government, we don't have that, and therefore one has to work on all the other areas of incentivization. Are you happy, Councillor Elliott, with the list that you've got there?
Yes, Chair. Yeah.
Does that,
The only reason I've been targeting staff is because agency staff obviously cost a lot of money.
of course, yeah.
And I noticed on QBR1 it was a 23 vacant post and 21 I think for this time. So I just sort of wondered if there was any issues going on, but everything all seems to be all my questions and that are all satisfactorily answered.
And you had a follow-on there on that basis of the shortage of HGV drivers. And Richard Hayes comes back to say that he now is at a full complement and has also just taken on an apprentice on HGV. Happy with that?
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Good. That ends the written questions, and to those who have taken the time to put those questions forward, thank you as always very much. Then finally,
There's Christmas hamper as well. Could have been added to the list. You did a Christmas hamper, didn't you, for the staff?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm thinking. What am I?
Just look at the list and said.
Right, everyone with a hat.
Thank you.
Answer to lecture, I just wonder why we're not getting the people joining Orange. Quite a good range of incentives.
yeah.
So the question is, why aren't we attracting people?
What is the flexi time? Like how much are people allowed to work from home?
If you recall, if you look at the forward plan, our HR managers do to report at the next meeting. So rather than me giving snippets, now it's better to I might give some of the long details for
are you happy to hold that? Then let's move on to consideration of the forward plan. Agenda item 9. As I said, we were just left with QBR2 today. We have a review of the QBR process, including recruitment and retention, listed for there. And then we've got presentations on the draft Northern Devon economic strategy, enforcement, planning and environmental, and the slipped report on the strategic management plan. Do we now think that we've got too much in that?
Yeah, it does seem a little bit heavy, doesn't it?
Realistically, we're looking at possibly slipping something out into cycle 7, I suspect.
Chair, should I suggest that we have a discussion with each of those officers with yourself? Yeah. 'Cause I know, draft Northern Devon strategic, economic strategy has obviously been done in conjunction with, North Devon, so I'm not quite sure exactly where we are, but I think that might be a little bit later. So I guess if we have a discussion.
Generally, councillors, I'm concerned that cycle 6, 12th of December, is looking over full. And I note your eagerness for nice long meetings in excess of 3 hours. But one's enthusiasm and time and concentration on something, if we go on too long, inevitably begins to wane, and a lot of these require a lot of effort put in by officers, and they deserve our full attention when they do come to us. And I will, together with the Chief Executive, we will go through each of those and look at what perhaps can slip. I think we've got one too many things in there now, and that's caused by the slip into it of the strategic asset management. Looking forward, there are 2 specific subjects that I would suggest to you that it would be useful for us to hear from officers about. Both require some explanation to us, briefing to us as to what is the actual format and rules to be followed, and then to look at what the situation is here with us in Torridge. One of which came up earlier this evening, and that is the affordable housing limits or levels. And there's quite a complex system that drives this, and then viability issues later on, etc. And we need to understand that first. So that needs to be, and then once you've had the background of how it works, then we actually look at what figures we're achieving, and we can then have a discussion as to whether we have concern that because we know we are below the percentage level that we as a council set, people's thinking on that.
Well, I was just wondering whether we've got an update when the housing strategy might be possible to, because obviously that would fit quite.
I thought about that, but because I've got something else that's going. It can be looked at separate from the housing strategy, because this is a policy issue within the planning process. It's not affected by strategy so much, because it's working to figures which have been laid down already. There is a process there, so I don't think it comes into
achieving the figures.
Yeah, and so that's why we could potentially look at it in isolation, rather than necessarily. Do people think that would be a useful thing to learn more about?
Affordable housing always comes up.
Well, I mean, affordable housing is on the
top priorities.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is specific, linked to the quotas of affordable housing, which are required by certain developments, etc., which are at a fixed percentage, and yet we fall well short of actually what we managed to deliver, and we need to understand the mechanism that goes on behind it first, and then be able to have a discussion with informed officers as to why we're not getting anywhere near that figure. Would that be
We have obviously the working and move towards a new local plan. And affordable housing will be obviously key. Subject within that for both us and our neighbours in North Devon that we're working together with. I think sometimes it's about awareness sessions of what does viability mean? You know, we've already got questions being asked about district valuers as opposed to independent valuers for looking at housing schemes. It's what people's knowledge is. What does affordable mean? Affordable to me might not be the same as affordable to my fellow councillor here. And it's really understanding the language we use when we're talking about affordable housing. Is it affordable to buy, affordable to rent? Is it impacted by the inability to our local housing allowance to cover the rent, that people have shortfalls immediately they go into the house and they have to find that on top of everything else, all the other expenses they have. So I think sometimes perhaps we need to be not looking at it as a thing to scrutinise, but a thing to educate and to share with our councillors. We used to do bite-sized training for people. And I think those are really quite useful. I think if you want to look at affordable housing, you need to look at the whole agenda, because there are significant issues around housing for young people, housing for people with support needs. And these are big issues that are coming up. That our partnership working with the county is significant. So I personally don't necessarily think affordable housing as a subject on its own here is useful, but that might just be me.
I think it's also, when talking about affordable homes, is also to bring into that the social homes, because obviously you've only got 3 types of ownership. You've got the open market, the affordable, and the social, and it's important to get the right mix of that, because obviously we've got a lot of housing associations in the area.
Also, you've got community land trusts, there are all sorts of brands of housing.
Get that entirely. But coming back to the argument that you were using with the Harbour Board, actually, as an act of scrutiny, currently there are criteria laid down on amount of affordable housing and what affordable housing in a technical planning point of view. That's not, I'm not looking, I want to know, at the moment, there are requirements laid upon the planning process here about delivery of affordable housing in terms of numbers of units per whatever, and they are set at, you know, if it's for purchase at X% below the market rate, etc. It's a different argument to say whether that is right or not. What I want to know at the moment is, or I understand at the moment, that we fall well short of what we say we should be delivering on that from a technical point of view. Put aside the moral discussions or anything like that. And I would like to understand better why we don't achieve our percentage level of affordable housing.
Which, sorry to harp on about it, but the viability is an issue that we allow developers to look at the viability during the planning or delivery of the scheme and actually come back to us.
You know that, but these people don't necessarily, and that's why we need.
That's why I said we need to look at information sharing, educating, rather than, that's not scrutiny. Scrutiny for me is where we've got a system that is set out and we think it's not working, and then we investigate it.
Well, we do have a system that's set out. We should be providing 30% of affordable housing, and we don't.
But we
so
know
we should be asking why not?
We know we're open to legal challenge. if you feel that's enough for a subject for a meeting, fine, but.
These are all different reasons that can be explained to us, but I think.
Sorry, perhaps I make assumptions that people are
Yeah,
conversant with those
I think
situations.
possibly there's.
Perhaps people, I don't know, around the table, are we all aware of the challenges of viability and how developers actually ask for a reduction in the number of affordable housing? Does everybody understand the principles of that?
I think the difference is that when you have a metric that you have to aspire to,
Yeah,
they are important, but
Yeah.
you still have the metric.
yeah,
And the question is the metric right?
yeah,
Really, because the thing about performance indicators is if you get the wrong one in place, it drives behaviour in the wrong way.
yeah. But that's the local plan that dictated that matrix for how, with the percentage of, for developments over a certain amount, you've got to have this.
So that is the metric we have, so that's what we're.
So we're scrutinising the local plan, which is,
Not sure that's quite an agreement, but if it is, then well, we'll look at it.
yeah. I have no objection, please don't think I'm objecting to it, but I just think,
I think it's a worthwhile thing to ask officers to brief us on what is the current system, what are the current problem, and how much do we miss that by, and what is causing that, why? Because it may well be, as a result, that is then something that we want to make sure is fed into the local plan review. And it can be a comment from this committee, because it's an internal thing, as Steve said, there are metrics set out. And when actually we don't deliver on that, we should be asking why not.
Could we include them to find out more about the role of this enabling officer, which we're waiting for, because we're told that that's holding us back from bringing forward community land trusts, so maybe that would be part of how we.
That's possibly part of the solution. It's okay, yeah.
Because I don't fully understand what the role is of the enabling officer, so it'd be good to find out how that would help develop and bring forward more affordable or social housing.
I mean, I thought that one of the problems with affordable housing, or allowing us to actually achieve our thresholds, is that the national planning policy framework actually undermines it and says that in certain scenarios you're allowed 0% affordable housing, and then you can't really do much with that situation.
That is all part of, I mean, if that is the case, that is all part of the brief you're going to get. Because you said, well, you thought, but you're not quite sure. Well, we need to speak to somebody who's actually a subject matter expert in the area. Because there's affordable housing, lack of, difficulties with, is something that's bandied around almost at every opportunity. And I think we need to have better quality understanding of the issues that are being faced by officers, etc. And I think that would be good for our instruction, and then would allow us to actually take a view as to whether it's necessary to take anything further on.
So it's a briefing session then.
It'd be a briefing, absolutely, but then with the ability then to have discussion with the officer as a result of that briefing. We should quite happily take briefs.
That's the overviews.
I would add to that the question of empty properties, which again, we frequently talk about empty properties, but I'd like to actually know really because I've got empty properties on my patch, which I've involved council officers in the past, and I've suddenly learned that actually it's hugely difficult to do anything about it legally, and then secondly, there's all sorts of financial liabilities from the council if we get involved too much, because suddenly we start taking on the. And I think again, I would welcome as part of that brief, a brief on what is actually the actual situation legally, procedurally, what can we do, what can't we do, and then what have we done so far or not, so that we have a more informed view as to why perhaps we haven't made the headway in this area that many of us may feel we haven't made. But I don't know, I think somebody give me some statistics to say how many we have actually managed to bring back into service, etc. So that's my suggestion, that we add, the timing of which would be subject to discussing, would be a affordable housing,
Yeah,
and empty properties. They're both one is planning, one is environmental side, but we would probably take it together. Happy? I'm seeing enough nods around. Okay, we will look to add that. Anything else that people want to see at the moment on the forward plan, bearing in mind that we've got a bit of a logjam and we need it needs to be filtered to the right a bit anyway. Cycle 7 is reserved for budget, so we don't want to be putting anything in there, and so we're starting to look at populating cycles into next year. Anything else that anybody's wanting to put?
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a quick question? This, the timing of the review of the QBR process, has that been set in tablets of stone, or could that not be moved to the February, not the February meeting, the March meeting, so that it would be ready for starting in Q1 of the next financial year? Or have we made a commitment to reviewing this in
the timing of that? I think I'm just looking at Chief Executive. Timing of that was driven partially by the budget setting, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In that was in place for the next budget.
I think it was something you had a discussion at an earlier meeting and you just scheduled it onto the forward plan rather than it had to be done for any specific reason.
It's
Chair, I can
yes,
remind
John.
you, because it was a new committee,
Yeah.
you wanted to go through 2 quarters of the QBR and then have the review. So it's not set in stone. It was purely, actually, we've had 2 QBRs. Now is it time to have a look at it? We are drafting a questionnaire to go out, but that hasn't been done yet. So it is not set in stone.
Yeah, it's not set. It's just a.
Could I make a proposal that we postpone that until cycle 7?
Yeah.
which cycles have we?
It's
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I've not got
We've got
respect
2
on.
cycles.
We've got 2 cycle 7s.
um
The March one,
yeah.
cycle 7.5.
The budget special shouldn't be a cycle, or I suspect, or it should be 6A or something. Is that right? Yeah. So it'll be 19th of March onwards anyway. Yes, by your suggestion, Councillor Hodgson, it is obvious that the QBR review is movable. And when I sit down with the chief executive, we just look at the other things, the high likelihood that one could, it's not driven by tablet of stone. And
Thank you for sharing that.
it's a questionnaire we want to put out to councillors and officers just to try to find out, and it doesn't have to be a particularly lengthy item either. The idea being if there's just any areas where it can be fine-tuned or tweaked to either make it easier from an input point of view or easier from an extraction point of view, more useful to people. Nothing more than that.
I just make one comment, Chair. I guess splitting one cycle would be fine. I wouldn't envisage just looking at it any further now. We have a peer review coming up and it'd be useful if that process is done before we go through that process. because then
Yeah,
at least we show-
then we know we've got it fine tuned, and also,
Just one cycle would be preferable than any later than that.
yeah,
So
okay.
not the March one.
No, the March one will probably just
The
about,
March will be
we're
okay.
just about hitting planning properly.
That'd be fine. Thank you for that.
That's all right, just
No, but absolutely,
frees up a bit of time.
no, indeed. Anything else at this point?
No.
Councillor Haynes.
I think Joe got the draft estuary strategy there. We had a task and finish group looking at that maybe over a year ago. So what's the status of that? Is that going to be ready for going out to consultation or?
It's just on the work programme and as an action in the economic business plan. They've got all the details from the task and finish group. It's just down to priorities as I understand it and workload. So I was hoping that it will be ready for there, but Can I just mention one, Chair?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got a meeting hopefully on the 29th of November this month to have a training session with an officer from Exeter. We've got a draft that been provided from the OGA that we're looking at, and we've got some metrics that we're hoping to pull together. So after that meeting of the 29th, whether it's December or February or March, we should be able to bring something to this committee.
Somebody could be able to bring an update to us at that stage?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that can be fairly short, I'd imagine, and it would be just a question of you briefing us, but, okay, yes, just, we don't want to lose sight on that, but good to hear that, all right, good.
If I go back, I mean, presumably there'll be some end date when the draft estuary strategy will be completed, because it's somewhat out of date, isn't it? Now, so, I mean, really it doesn't go on and on being put on the forward plan. There must be some idea of when it's going to be in a form where it can go out in consultation.
Sure, we'll have a look at it. I haven't got the details with me, so we'll pick up with the team.
I did speak to them, and that's what I just said was the response I had. So, but we will check again.
What, on the estuary strategy?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just the word hope was used. I think we were expecting more than hope in April, because the point was that the questions were raised 2 years ago, and the estuary strategy will now be 10 years as of 2024. So I think a bit more than hope, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess we got the same officers working on the same plans. So we got an economic strategy that's coming forward. We've got a levelling up partnership that we have to start to bring forward. We've got a strategic plan which needs to be done, and we've got all the same officers doing all the same things. So some things have to take priority over others, I'm afraid.
Yeah, okay. Fine, if we can
We'll just go get another update.
if we can have an update as to where they're actually at with it, then that'd be kind. Councillors, anything else? Good, right, well, first of all, thank you for your time, and if that's the case, then I declare the meeting closed, and we are meeting